Hello everybody and welcome back to FPL Link. My name is Dan and I'm here to bring you another FPL video for the Fantasy Premier League season 2022-2023. So in this video we're going to be jumping in to the second day for the player price reveals released by the official FPL Twitter page. So we're going to jump straight in. Scrolling down here we have Liverpool first, I believe. Let's just scroll through. So Salah, Trent and Diaz coming in at 8 million there. I think FPL managers will be very, very happy that Mohamed Salah is coming in at that midfielder classification. There was some speculation that he could potentially get changed to a forward. Myself included did possibly think that once I saw Mbermo yesterday listed as a forward rather than a midfielder. I potentially thought Salah might get reclassified. Be interesting to see what they decide for Heung-min Son as well. But yeah, 13 million. I think there's no surprises there. Trent 7.5, of course. Diaz 8. Yeah, I think they're all fair prices really. Anything to note on this lot? I mean, Robertson stays the same at 7 million. Darwin actually coming in at 9 million. I would have anticipated maybe 9.5. I think the third party sites were predicting that he would be coming at 9.5. But I think that's fair. Potentially, we don't know how many minutes Klopp is going to give him. He's potentially going to be rotating. Jota, interestingly though, being reclassified from a midfielder into a forward and an increase in price up to 9 million, so matching Nunez's price. They are potentially two players we can consider through the season, but I think in terms of game week 1 squads or game week 1 to 5 drafts, I think it's going to be difficult to justify putting in a 9 million forward, in my opinion, into the draft. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see when all the prices are released and we can understand a little bit more detail of those price points. And if there's those all-important transfer moves that become viable, then we can have a look at that. But I think there's no surprises there for me, really. Moving into Manchester United next, Ronaldo actually at 10.5 million, with Bruno Fernandes coming in at 10 and Jadon Sancho being heavily reduced to 7.5 million. I think there's an interesting topic really with Ronaldo, because I think he has clearly got the explosive potential still of scoring big, essentially. It's just that Manchester United last season they weren't the same team really under Rangnick as those early days of Solskjaer, and they weren't creating enough chances for this man. He was kind of a one-man band at times, I think. And I do think this season will be better under Ten Hag. I do think that there'll be much more creative football being played, but in terms of putting him in for a draft off the bat, I think it'd be more likely that we see him, if he does stay at Manchester United, in a potential fixture swing when United's fixtures look a little bit better. I think they're about 12th on the fixture ticker, so not exactly the targeted area that we should be looking at. Bruno at 10 million, I think that's fair. I don't think he had as good of a season last season at all. With the competition with Ronaldo on penalties as well, arguably he's a bit of a risk. And at that price point, as a midfielder, 10 million is hard to shift around and get up to from a cheaper price, really. So we'll see. Potentially could come into a free hit or a wild card draft later down the line. Sancho 7.5, I think again is fair. He didn't really kick on as what most people maybe expected from him. Especially with the signing of Varane and Ronaldo last season. I think a lot of people, professional pundits and the community, maybe expected a little bit more from him. So 7.5 million, I think, is justified based on the stats he gave us last season. They weren't nearly as good as the Bundesliga ones he had. But I'll be interested to see what he can produce under Ten Hag. So I think the football will improve. I think the possession will improve, and the creativity should benefit players like Jadon. Van der Beek 5.5. Again, I mean these price points here at 5.5 million. It's a possibility, but I think we'll see other players that potentially could beat these two in that price point. Really, Rashford only 6.5 million this season. Wow, I mean I think he was 9 million last season. That just shows really the fall from grace that he's had. He really wasn't showing any type of form or creativity or that kind of that deadly ability to score like he did under Solskjaer briefly. I think there's ever since he had that shoulder injury, I believe, and he had some time away. I think under Ranić he certainly didn't flourish. Elanga was given more opportunities than him. Jadon Sancho as well was playing on the right at times, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with him again under Ten Hag. 6.5 could be a very, very good price point for him. But again, we'll just have to maybe wait and see what the first few weeks give us from a Man United perspective before we consider them. Moving into Wolves next, Jimenez at 7 million, Jose Sarr at 5 million, and Johnny at 4.5. I think Jimenez, that's an interesting one at 7. I think the forwards I've seen, Bamford was 7.5, so the game has decided to give Jimenez a little bit of a lower price. Maybe that is fair, just because he didn't really produce much last season, to be fair. But again, would I consider him? Wolves are in the top 5 of the fixture ticker, so potentially. But it's just all about those magical price points, isn't it, really? That's what it comes down to. I would possibly look at Sarr. I think he had the highest save percentage of all Premier League goalkeepers last season, which is not anything to be sniffed at. That extra 0.5 million that we may spend on him versus, let's say, Raya, other keepers as well coming in at 4.5, those all important save points could really make a difference across those initial, let's say, 8 to 10 weeks, maybe even more, depending on when we choose to wildcard and change the goalkeeper. Wolves' fixtures, at least for the first five weeks, look promising for clean sheet and potential save points. So I would consider him, I think, in some drafts as a second option if we wanted to cover Wolves from a defensive option. Maybe Johnny, 4.5 million. That is a good price, especially since I think towards the back end of the season he got a couple of goals, maybe 1 assist or 2. Was certainly playing in that more advanced wing back role that we like to see from an FPL manager perspective, giving us that opportunity to seize on. Of course, those all-important assists and goals, as well as the clean sheet points, so possibly one to consider. On the opposite side to Johnny, I think Aït-Nouri plays there. I'm not sure how much he would be able to produce, though. Again, I suppose it's a situation where we check out those first few games and make a decision from there. Neto coming in at 5.5. As mentioned with Fred and Donny, I think as a 5.5 option, Neto or Neves or even Podence potentially could slot into that price point a little bit better based on those first 5 fixtures. As I say, Wolves are, I think, 5th, Manchester United 12th in the fixture ticker. I would say Neto's probably got the most explosive potential from an FPL perspective, just on the basis of his creativity, the fact we know he can score an absolutely outstanding worldie goal from outside the box. He didn't produce anything really last season based on his injuries, unfortunately, but he's certainly one, I think, to consider. Daniel Podence does have, I guess, he does have creative potential. He's had moments in certain game weeks, I believe, where he's pulled in double digits. Would I consider him over Neto, though, at that same price? Probably not, is the short of it, really. Connor Cody as well, another person to mention, I guess, that's come in at 5 million rather than 4.5. So I think in FPL terms, putting centre-backs into our teams, yes, he did get a few important goals for Wolves last season, but at 5 million, I think it's always better if you've got the wing-back option like Aït-Nouri or Johnny for 0.5 cheaper, with the potential to score you more points more regularly across, say, those first 5 game weeks, the first 10 game weeks, however long we keep these players in for. I think it's worth going for that wing-back option instead of the centre-back. And then last to note, really, there is Hwang, of course, being recategorised from a forward to a midfielder. I think his price may be the same. Maybe he's a little bit more expensive, but that's an interesting move, actually. I do think he played a little bit deeper, actually, when I sort of watched a couple of the Wolves games last season. So I wasn't expecting that, but I don't think, again, at 6 million do we consider him. Potentially, if form dictates that we should be thinking about him, sure, but definitely not maybe off the bat of the first few game weeks. Moving into Villa next, Coutinho coming in at 7 million, Watkins 7.5, and Matty Cash at 5 million. I think all fair price points. Coutinho at 7, no real surprises there, although he did blank on quite a substantial amount of game weeks towards the end of the season, actually. He produced as when he first turned up, and then it just seemed to be a bit of a dry spell after that. Did have chances, though. Definitely his stats were good. They just seemed to haul all the points in those initial games after coming in from Barcelona. Watkins 7.5, again, I think that's justified. He's pretty much, I think, first choice from Steven Gerrard's perspective. Cash at 5 million as well. I think that's fair. And his opposite number, Digne, as well, 5 million. Possibly ones to consider. Again, on free hit, maybe wildcard drafts, just 5 million can potentially be a bit of an awkward price point, depending on the team setup. Ramsey actually coming in at 5.5 instead of that 4.5 last season, so a little bit less of a bargain, but still definitely one to maybe consider. I think Villa are not too bad on the fixture ticker. They're about halfway down, I think, so potentially one of these guys could fit in, maybe a McGinn, maybe a Ramsey, but we'll have to see. Ings at 7 million. Okay, I mean, second choice really, I think, to Gerrard's preferred option of Watkins, but 7 million. If he's on the pitch, is he on penalties? I don't know. Maybe again, one to consider later down the line. And finally, the last team revealed today is Fulham. So Mitrovic coming in at 6.5 million, Wilson at 6, Cordova-Reid at 5.5. I don't think really any of these, potentially we could say Mitrovic and Wilson, those two guys really, if we're looking at a good run of fixtures for this side, then potentially these two could produce. I mean, Mitrovic has had reasonable success in Premier League seasons and then also absolute flops. It's been very, very contrasting. I don't think he's going to replicate the 40 plus goals he did last season. I would find that very, very astonishing if he manages to reach even 20, to be honest, in the Premier League. But 6.5 million, I think, is a fair price for him. Potentially a sort of budget option in potential fixture swing drafts. Wilson at 6 million. I'm not sure how much set pieces he takes for Fulham. I mean, if he's on direct free kicks and corners, 6 million is that kind of sweet spot really between 5.5 and 6 million for rotating players. Really, he could be an option at that stage. As for Cordova-Reid, I think he wasn't too bad when Fulham were in the Premier League last. He had some really good potential, I think, and moments of creativity. Again, at 5.5 mark, though, if I was going to consider that price point, Neto for me already, out of what we've seen today, blows these guys out of the water, really, because he's proven, and also he has that explosivity and the creativity that we've seen in past seasons where he could potentially score us a lot more points. So I don't think really these guys are to be considered, at least early on. Unfortunately, not enough information really on these players in the Premier League. We could see again some of these players come in as essentially either bench fodder or when fixture swings take place. But yeah, nothing really to note that's too important, I don't think, on Fulham. So yeah, I'm going to wrap it up there, guys. Thank you very much for watching and continuing with the support. It really helps me if you guys would consider subscribing to the channel as well. If you're enjoying the content, I've got more pre-season content planned. I'm going to do some more player price reactions as we get drip fed more and more over the next few days, and the game officially should be launching then, hopefully next week. And once that does, 100% we're going to be kicking off with some drafts, and yeah, looking forward to it. Hope you guys, like I say, are enjoying the content so far. Let me know in the comments below if there's any price points you disagree with, anything you think should have been changed, any positions that you thought were pretty much nailed on to be swapped, or if you think that they've made any mistakes. But yeah, that's going to do it, guys. So thanks again for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.